The basketball mistake of using too much adrenaline. I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
Hydration's your friend, don't ignore the signs. A balanced life keeps you in your prime. Mental grit and a steady hand win more than just a one-match stand.
Today we're talking about the mistake of using too much adrenaline when it comes to basketball, be it actual games and competition or even like practice and training. Now, I do admit up front, I don't know how common of a basketball mistake this is, because I don't know how much basketball players depend on using adrenaline to help fuel their performance. I think this is probably more of an overall like sports athletics kind of competition problem that probably more athletes in general have. I don't know how specific it is to basketball, but it was a mistake, a problem that I had as a basketball player, using too much adrenaline and all the like fallout that comes from that. I made that mistake as a player, so today I want to address that problem on the court. To start with, let's define what I mean by using adrenaline and address the problems that it then can cause. Immediately, that brings us to why I'm not sure how common this is, because the reason it was a problem for me, just to begin with, was the fact that I regularly address on this channel that I was not an average athlete or an average basketball player, because I wasn't born with what I believe to be like average basketball talent, or even average like athletic talent or ability. Any progress that I made in terms of athletic ability or basketball, like I had to start from the ground and work my way up. I was out here with other players, like when I first started getting involved with basketball, and you would think like we were all sort of on the same level in terms of like ability and talent, but to me, I wasn't with them. They were above me. So I always thought of it like they're more talented, they have more athletic ability than I do, thus I have to learn, teach myself, and develop all of that. But one of the few like rare exceptions when it comes to athletic ability that I did have was I was always able to be high energy. I never ran out of energy. My energy level never really dipped. And on the very rare occasion that it did, I could always kind of manually bring it back up. I never got like an hour or two into playing games or even like training. It was never like, oh, I'm tired now, I have to give up and leave, and even though I don't really want to be done yet. My energy would always stay high, be high, and just stay there way better, way more than any of the other players I ever encountered. That was just a natural physical athletic talent that I was born with that was sort of out of my control. It's not like I worked and earned that ability. I just was born with it. I did work to develop it and make it better and optimize it, but there's no denying the fact that I was born with it, and apparently most other players just weren't. Part of that ability came to be that like one of the ways that I could keep my energy high was by dipping into my adrenal reserves. I always thought of this in terms of like, you know, the Fast and Furious movies where they use the NOS to make their car go faster, but it's only for a spurt. It's only for like a few seconds at a time where they can go faster than they normally would. That's sort of the general idea of how adrenaline is supposed to work and works for most players. It works the same way for me, but also for me, I was able to sort of teach myself, instead of using like the whole can of NOS in just one blow, I could sort of teach myself how to like, it's like having a gas tank. Instead of using the entire gas tank all at once, I could just sort of dip into the gas tank just a little bit, just to get a little bit of adrenaline at a time. If my energy started to dip, I could dip into that gas tank, that NOS tank, and bring my energy back up and then sort of stabilize it throughout the rest of a game or a day. I had the ability to do that, thus my stamina, my endurance, my energy would stay high and stable throughout an entire day, whereas other players around me, their energy would slowly sort of dip off. Mine would always stay and remain high. And the older I got and the more aware I became of like, okay, here's how to use adrenaline to do that. Unfortunately for me, I started to abuse it more and more. So for example, I didn't have to worry anymore about my energy dipping because I eliminated that altogether once I learned how to manipulate my adrenaline. Instead, now I just sort of redlined my adrenaline, my energy the entire time. So meaning my energy was always as high as I could possibly raise it throughout the entire day. And I was doing that by forcing myself to use adrenaline. Probably most players, when they talk about like using and abusing adrenaline, the way they probably go about it is like they start to feel tired. And when they feel that fatigue setting in, they have some kind of innate ability to go like, okay, I'm starting to feel tired. Time to step it up and use adrenaline. For most players, I'm guessing that adrenaline kind of comes in one big shot, right? Like how I was able to sort of dip my toe into the adrenaline pool and just use a little bit at a time to keep my energy high and stable. For most players, I'm guessing the way they do it is like they start to feel fatigued, they don't want to, and so they sort of go, okay, time to use adrenaline, but when they use it, they don't have the natural physical talent that I did to use a little bit at a time. And so for them, it's like that one big chunk of adrenaline all at once. It may not be their entire reserve of adrenaline, but it's probably more than they needed at that given time. And then throughout the game or that game day, they kind of like their body will regenerate the adrenaline so that if they need it to use it again, they have that option to do so. And then they do that, throughout the day. They get tired, they use adrenaline. They get tired, they use adrenaline. To me, I was able to just, use a little bit at a time and just keep myself stable. To them, it's like one big shot when they need it. So now that we've addressed what the problem with using adrenaline is, like how to abuse using adrenaline, let's talk about the problems that come from it and then hopefully how to solve it to a degree. Like I said, all of this leads to the mistake of abusing adrenaline. See, at the time when I was young and I didn't realize it, I was actually abusing my adrenaline use. It wasn't like, oh, I just use it now and then when I need to, which would be appropriate. I was actually abusing it. I was making the mistake of abusing it, but I didn't realize it at the time. The problem with this is that your body is not meant to be running off of adrenaline. It's not supposed to be like its primary fuel source. Your body is meant to be conditioned so that without adrenaline, you just play as hard as you possibly can and give the best effort for the longest amount of time that you possibly can. And then when you're tired and it's time to call it a day. Or if you get tired too soon, too fast, too dramatically, then that's just a call for, well, you need to be more conditioned. But most of the time, you're not meant and you're not supposed to use adrenaline to supplement that and try to force yourself to be better when you're not ready to be. Like if you're supposed to be more conditioned, then you shouldn't be using adrenaline to compensate from that. You should be doing more training off the court to get more conditioned to compete. The whole idea of adrenaline is it's a necessity. You dip into those adrenal reserves when you need to, not just because you can't. Because the problem that arises for doing that is once you deplete that adrenal reserve, it doesn't come back. Like, yes, the younger you are, the fresher your body is, the faster your body will replenish those adrenal reserves. But with as physically taxing as basketball is, the wear and tear that gets put on your body, your joints and your ligaments from, pounding on hard abrasive surfaces like concrete, like asphalt, even hardwood, all that pounding, that wear and tear accumulates over time. And with that accumulation of wear and tear, thus grows your dependency on using adrenaline because your body's going to be that much more worn down. Thus, you're going to need to depend on using adrenaline to pick your physical performance back up. And there is something to be said about if you're young and fresh, it's kind of a good thing to teach and train your body to be able to use adrenaline, like to know how and if you can tap into your adrenal reserves. That can be a good thing to a point. The question is, where does that point happen where now you're abusing it? Because the older you get, the more wear and tear you have on your body, the slower those adrenal reserves are going to be able to replenish themselves. And if you get to the extreme point, like I did, of being well overtrained because I ran my body stupidly into the ground by playing basketball and training and practicing all the time, nonstop, and while doing all that, using adrenaline to fuel, like give myself the ungodly, like high intensity kind of energy that I needed to be practicing, playing, training all day, every day. When you're severely overtrained like that and you're using adrenaline to compensate for the extreme fatigue your body is naturally feeling, and you compound that with like, one of the reasons my body is slowing down is because of natural wear and tear on the court. Now you're looking at a recipe that's going to completely deplete your store of adrenaline. The more you abuse the adrenaline that you have and the stores of it, the more you sort of take your body to absolute zero, meaning you play as hard as you possibly can, you get tired, you dip into the adrenaline, you deplete your adrenaline. The more you do that, now you're looking at complete physical burnout. By complete physical burnout, what I mean is your body is done. Like, so a sort of example, when you're young and you get tired, right? You feel the fatigue, you go home, you eat something, you sleep, right? You come back the next day, you feel perfectly fine because your body's young and fresh. As you get older, the same thing happens, but it's a slower process because your body, with the wear and tear, it just is slower to recover. And the more you deplete your adrenal reserves because of it, you're going to get to a point where your body is just so tired, so worn out, burnt out, that it can't even replenish its store of adrenaline, let alone being able to sort of recover from, the high intensity activity, play that you're putting it through. So not only is your body sort of not generally recovering and resting, but it also now gets to a point where it can't even build up and restore its adrenal stores. That's called being overtrained, when your body cannot, by any means at all, including trying to force itself to use adrenaline, it cannot recover, it cannot repair, it can't get better. You'll hit a physical wall where you get tired, and then you just stay tired. You stay fatigued no matter what you do, no matter how long you rest, no matter what you do, day after day after day, resting, trying to recover. Your body just feels tired, fatigued, and just worn out completely. It's not getting better. You're not getting any energy back. You're not feeling any better day after day, even though in the past, like last month, last year, whatever, you would work as hard as you normally do. But after a day or two, you'd get pretty much back up to like 90% or so, and then you go back down and you work your way back. Like, you're used to sort of that roller coaster of high intensity work, getting tired, but coming back a day or two later and feeling fine again. This time, there is no coming back. Once you go down and you get into that valley, now you're in a valley of no energy, complete lethargy and fatigue. And you try to rest, you try to recover, and it just does not come back. Not only is that being overtrained, but you have burnt out your body's adrenal ability to recover and operate as well. That's what I like to refer to as like your body's physical, like absolute zero. You have no recovery. You have no ability to recover. For me, the worst part was because I was such an energy-driven person. As long as I was like high energy, and as long as my energy was high, I was always in a good mood. I was energetic and had something to put that energy into. I was always a positive, optimistic, like fun-loving, funny kind of person. But like once that energy is gone and you're just tired all the time, my reaction to that was just being in a terrible mood, because low energy is the opposite of high energy, and high energy meant I was in a great mood all the time. When I was low energy, I was pretty much depressed. And that was back in my 20s where you would still be relatively young and your body would be relatively fresh. But because I overtrained myself so much and abused my adrenaline so much, that once I depleted all that, the energy was permanently low and I was permanently in a state of like depression. Always low energy, always tired, and always in a bad mood. Because you have to remember, adrenaline is a hormone. And if you deplete a hormone, now you're like hormonally imbalanced. And when that happens, that's going to affect everything in your body, not just your physical well-being. It's going to throw off your emotional, psychological well-being as well. Now, hopefully you're smart, way smarter than I was, and hopefully this video helps to serve as like a warning to like, don't let yourself get that bad. Like, we all want to push ourselves, right, and go as hard as we can and see what our ceiling is and bust through that ceiling and take ourselves further and push ourselves harder. Like, we all want to do that, but there's a way to do it responsibly so that you don't overtrain yourself. You don't put yourself in the kind of burnout position that I was in. The best way to do that is by rest and recovery. It really is that simple. I know it's like obvious, like duh, of course you're supposed to rest and recover. But, you know, like this is a hardcore, like serious, like over the top kind of basketball channel. So like the stuff that we do, you know, we're going to go as hard as we possibly can. And for some of us, right, we take that, like I'm an all or nothing kind of person. So I took it to an extreme. When I was training, when I was trying to get better, it was all day, every day. Little rest as possible, because rest meant like progress was slowing down or impeded for the time while I was resting. So forget rest. I'm young, I'm fresh, I'm going to push myself as hard as I can. You take it to that kind of extreme, you're going to get, you know, extreme consequences that come with that. And when you're in that kind of extreme mindset with that kind of extreme motivation, it's easy to forget and overlook the obvious stuff like, yeah, you got to rest and you got to recover. And that rest and recovery, like, that's where the actual progression, like the most of it happens. Like, you push yourself as hard as you can, you bust through whatever ceiling that you have as a player. But once you do that, if you want that progress to be as much as it possibly can, and for it to be as potent and effective as it possibly can, the night or whatever, the day after you bust through that plateau and like you push yourself beyond what you thought you could, you have to rest and recover. If you don't rest and recover, you'll still make progress, but it's not going to be nearly as much progress as you would have made if you would have properly rested and recovered after pushing through your ceiling. Believe me, I have way too much personal experience of doing that to, you know, not have that be an accurate statement. Young me watching this video would think, hey, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know me and my body and what my body's capable of. I can push myself day after day and still just make as much progress, if not more, if I actually took the time to rest and recover. Like, rest and recover is time wasted. That's what the young me would think. But me now knows much better, which is like, not only is rest and recovery helpful and is way more progress helping than pushing hard day after day without rest, but it's needed, it's relaxing, it's recuperative. It helps in every way, shape, and form. The only way that it doesn't really help is if you're young and you don't have the patience to take the rest, to recover, to take that time. If you don't have that patience yet, then that's hard to deal with. Like, you're anxious, you know, and excited to get back on the court. You don't want to wait. You just want to get back on the court. You don't have the patience yet. That might be the only real difficult part. Everything else is well worth the rest and recovery. So let's wrap up this video by getting a little bit more specific about how go about getting the best rest and recovery. Again, another obvious point to be made here about how to actually rest and recover properly. Because even though it's obvious, if you're in that kind of extreme mindset that I just described, it's easy to overlook the obvious and simple, easy stuff. But just because it's obvious, simple, and easy doesn't mean that it's like not valuable. It's some of the most valuable things you can do. Part of the reason why it's so obvious. So in terms of rest and recovery, the best ways to go about it is from the standpoint of sleeping, eating, hydrating. So after you spend the day on the court, be it practice, training, or actual competition, pushing yourself, testing yourself, trying to push through whatever ceilings you have, after you've done that, after you've pushed yourself to your absolute limit, my order of doing this would be as follows. First of all, you need to stay as hydrated as possible. So while you're pushing yourself, going through that high intensity activity, really trying to test yourself and go above and beyond what you're capable of while you're doing that, stay hydrated. Water is good, but anything that has electrolytes in it, that much better. Not only do you want to stay hydrated during that high intensity activity, you want to stay and get rehydrated afterwards as well. There's not really a point of being too hydrated. Yes, technically, there is the condition where you could technically drown yourself if you drink too much water. That's not obviously what I'm talking about, right? I'm just talking about so you never feel thirsty. You always have your body well hydrated so that it can always perform, rest, and recover, all three to the very best of its ability. If you're not hydrated, you're not going to be doing any of those three to your optimal ability. And I put hydration first just because you can do it not only while you're recovering and resting, but you can also do it while you're actually performing and testing yourself. Secondly, and I say secondly in terms of time period, right? So you put in the work and now it's time to rest and recover. You need to be hydrated first. Secondly, you need to replenish yourself from a food and nutrition standpoint. So get good macronutrients into your system. Primarily protein, because you need to rebuild and re-strengthen all the muscles that you just push to their point of exhaustion. You need to get that protein into you to help make those muscles strong again. Secondly, would be good, clean carbohydrates, especially when we're talking about specifically after high intensity physical activity. Carbohydrates might actually be more important than protein because the energy your body generates comes from carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the easiest form of energy your body can ingest and then generate from. So get in some good, clean carbohydrates. If you're the kind of person who you don't really like carbs and you kind of stay away from them for the most part, in terms of high intensity exercise, if you're going to have carbs at any point, the most important time to have them is after high intensity exercise. Get in plenty of protein, get in plenty of good, clean carbohydrates. Obviously, you're going to want to get in some good, clean fats as well. I'm not as concerned about that, even though they are important, but I do put the emphasis on protein and carb. In terms of calories and energy, getting that energy back into your body that you just expended, most of the time when it's just a regular practice, a regular training session where you're not really pushing yourself, you're not really trying to tax yourself all that much. It's just like a normal, ordinary practice. You just want to take in as much calories and energy that you need. But after these specific days where you're really pushing yourself, when you're really trying to push through that ceiling and putting out an over-the-top amount of energy, it's those days where don't really be concerned about the amount of calories that you intake after said activity. Better to have too many calories after that high intensity, out of the ordinary, over the top high intensity activity. It's better to have too many calories the meal after that than to not have enough. Better to have more than less the meal after high intensity exercise. And then last, but certainly not least, is sleep and rest. So rest in general means just get off your feet. Put your feet up, lay down, or at least sit down, and let your body stop moving. To get the weight off of your feet and let your body just sort of rest. But what's way more important, because it's way more effective in terms of helping you heal and making you thus get better as a player and an athlete, is sleep. Sleep cannot be stated. It is so important. It is so vital to your recovery and thus you growing as an athlete and a player. In terms of your body's ability to recover and grow in terms of getting stronger, faster, and recovering, nothing beats sleep. Not food, not water. Sleep is the most powerful thing that you can do to help your body recover, grow, get stronger, faster, all of that. Sleep is the biggest major key to all of that. And not just the amount of sleep you get, but the quality of sleep you get, how deep you get as you sleep. The deeper you sleep for longer, the better, more recovered, stronger, faster, more progress your body is going to make. It's better to have deep sleep for a small amount of time than light sleep for a longer amount of time. Now, how you achieve that deep sleep is going to vary from person to person, player to player, because all of our biology is a little bit different in how we react to different things and different variants and stimulants and all of that. So you need to experiment and find out, figure out how you can induce the best, deepest sleep for yourself. But after game days, after you've pushed yourself, you need to eat, you need to drink and get hydrated, but so much more importantly, you need to sleep deeply and long, deep as possible. Now, being hydrated and being satisfactorily fueled by the nutrition and the food that you eat after that activity, the better you're going to sleep. But if you need to think of it in terms of like the better hydrated I am and the more satiated I am from the food that I ate, if you need to think about it in that way so that you sleep better, then whatever it takes for you to as deeply as you possibly can, especially on days where you recognize that you've used a lot of adrenaline, maybe more adrenaline than you should have, especially on those days. Those are the days where you need to eat, sleep, and drink as much as you possibly can. Like almost take it to an extreme because, again, using adrenaline, especially abusing adrenaline, is an extreme use of your body's resources. If you're going to that extreme, then your recovery process then needs to be extreme as well. And just in general, the more adrenaline you use, the longer you should rest. So maybe it's more than a day, maybe it's a couple days. Whatever it is, you don't want to deplete your adrenal resources to the point where they have trouble regenerating. Part of being optimal physically is like your body's ability to recover. And recovering also includes your body's ability to recover its hormonal resources as well, including your adrenals. So whenever you do use adrenaline, the more you use, the more you have to rest and recover. You have to wait. You have to be patient. You have to know and understand that if you're going to use adrenaline, it comes at a price. Part of that price is the more you use, the more you have to rest and recover. The longer time period it's going to take to recover properly. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it helpful at all, if you think it's going to help you when it comes to using, not abusing, and recovering from using adrenaline, then please subscribe to the channel. Let us know how you actually recover, like your best optimal ways for recovering from using too much adrenaline. Let us know down in the comments. But before you do comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below, because not only does hitting that thanks button highlight any comment you make, thus making it stand out from any other comment, but hitting that thanks button also directly supports the channel. So for anyone that does hit that thanks button, know I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment. Like I said, make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, see you guys next week.
Adrenaline rules till it breaks you down. Running on fumes, wearing a frown. Take it slow, take it easy, take the time. Don't let the burn